What you own and how you spend your money is one of the most powerful social tools that we have invented in our modern consumer society. People will make fun of a Ford owner in the comments of a video and then identify themselves as a Dodge guy in their Instagram bio. But one of the strongest and most prolific brand loyal groups in the world are Apple users. And as an Apple user, it's kind of dumb. A huge thank you to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. How's my hair look? Yeah, that's good. At the time of the releasing of this video, the latest iPhone is probably about to be announced. It's going to be better and greater than any iPhone before it. It's going to sell millions. It's going to be very, very popular. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great phone. Except it's probably not going to be that great. Every year when the newest iPhone is released, there is a predictable wave of hype, big announcements and features that get covered across the internet.
It's a phone, but it's so much more. It is a camera.
Then, quickly after that, the opinions and outrage over how little has changed, how this is just a facelift from the year before, and how stupid people are for being Apple users. But those are just opinions, and let's not forget that we're talking about the single most valuable company in the world, and most importantly, they retain more repeat customers than pretty well any other brand in any industry. Brand loyalty for this company is pretty well unmatched, and it tells us a lot about why brand loyalty works and how it kinda doesn't make any sense if you really start looking into it. Now, first off, I think we need to establish that there are really two different kinds of brand loyalty, and that there is a spectrum in between them. On one end of the spectrum, we have what I'm gonna call emotional brand loyalty. It's connected to our childhood or our family or a positive memory or a feeling that we get when we have that thing. This is like you drinking Bud Light because your old man used to drink it. Then on the other side of the spectrum is the practical brand loyalty, which is supposed to be more rational but isn't actually. This is you drive a Toyota Prius because your whole family drives Toyotas and they've been really reliable and you trust the brand to make a product that is good. The Toyota reference there is actually mine. I drive a Toyota Prius because my parents and most of my entire family have bought Toyotas. So it feels like a weird part of our family identity at this point. But at either end of this spectrum, there is a lot of mental gymnastics going on to try and convince ourselves of the choices that we make along the way. And brands understand that if they can get your loyalty, they've basically won the consumer Olympics. Which brings us back to Apple. Apple is a $3 trillion company, worth more than a lot of countries, in large part because they have learned to play the long game. This has a name in the economics world called customer capitalism, and it's basically the radical idea that if you keep your customers happy, they will buy more of your product, which ends up providing more value to shareholders in the long run. If you're thinking this sounds kind of obvious, yes it is, but you gotta understand these are economists we're talking about. They actually had to come up with a term and a theory for just treating your customers properly. Because it turns out existing loyal customers buy 90% more stuff than new ones. Well over half of a company's revenue typically comes from those existing customers. Except in our case, because we get more than half of our views from people who aren't subscribed to our channel. So I'll just take a minute here while you do that, please. So why aren't all companies doing this? Like, why isn't this just standard practice? Because the sad truth is that the bar is on the goddamn floor. See, most modern businesses today that you would probably recognize the name of are publicly traded companies, meaning that they have shareholders like you and me, but probably more so rich people, who have purchased shares with the expectations of those values in those companies going up. This is basically just the stock market, where your savings, if you are very lucky to have any, are invested. Every quarter, these businesses report their numbers to investors, and to summarize a lot of economics degrees in 4 words, up, good, down, bad. But the problem with this is that it's naturally short-sighted. You have to prioritize the profits of today and tomorrow so that your quarterly earnings can keep going up. In most cases, this usually means that companies are forced to constantly expand and push into new markets and develop new technology and buy up their competitors and just never stop until they rule the world, I guess. I don't know what the end goal is here. And the truth is, a lot of this growth and expansion has very little to do with the customer being happy and more so about making as much money as possible. And Apple is different, kind of. Apple has done a really great job of retaining customers, and if you are an Apple person, you might already have some idea of why that might be. When doing the research for this video, we found a couple of stories about how Apple has been changing their business model to meet consumer needs. But the most impactful was definitely this one, all about how Apple is planning to integrate ChatGPT into Siri, which I don't know if that's a thing that consumers need, but it is a story that we wouldn't have come across if it weren't for the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is an app and a website dedicated to gathering thousands of news articles all in one place to give you the full context. We keep working with them because we love the platform and we think that you will too. So feel free to check them out at ground.news/futureproof. What's great about Ground News is that you can take a look at all of the articles from a particular subject, and you'll notice that it tells you not only if they lean left or right, but who they're backed by. Being able to take a look at articles from all sides of the political spectrums lets us know things like how the right focuses pretty heavily on the fact that Apple won't be paying OpenAI for this integration, while the left opens a broader conversation about what this means for the company as a whole. Another awesome feature is their blind spot feed, which shows you what the left and the right are and are not focusing on. Here you can get easy access to the other side's news reality to see the full picture of what's going on in the world. It also means that you won't miss anything if you get most of your news from social media. We love Ground News because they encourage making informed decisions by sharpening your critical thinking skills, which is exactly what this channel is all about. So we encourage you to dive right in by going to ground.news/futureproof or just scan this QR code to get started. You can join for less than $1 a month or just use our link in the description to get 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan, which is what we use here on the channel. Huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring today. Let's get back into the video. Do you remember how earlier we showed you how economists defined customer capitalism, right? Like how to treat customers properly as a theory by the economists? I want you to apply that same kind of thinking that invented that term to imagine how these companies might try and keep you interested in their product. Because customer retention is not the same as customer satisfaction. Listen, these companies are not on some sort of vision quest to try and find out what truly makes their customer base ticks and to create something that is fundamentally great and improves their lives and the world around them. It is about making money while looking like you're doing those things. Today, it is not just outliers like Apple that are supposedly putting the customer first. In 2019, nearly 200 execs from major companies including Amazon, Pepsi, Walmart, and of course Apple, issued a statement that business is no longer just about profit for shareholders. Rather, it is about providing genuine value to customers, communities, and employees alike, such as paying reasonable wages and supporting environmental and social causes. I have to say, if I believed anything that any of these people ever said, this would be an absolutely earth-shattering shift for the better. But when you look at how their actions play out, it tells a very different story. See, a lot of their value that they're providing when it comes to, the communities and the reasonable wages and the environmental causes or whatever, it's usually being handled by some sort of PR marketing with a corporate social responsibility report. These are well-designed pamphlets created by companies to show the impressive work that they have done to make the world a better place, but mostly to make people feel like they're not just exploiting everyone around them in the effort to make as much money as possible. You can find these reports for basically any majorly publicly traded company just by Googling their name and then putting CSR afterwards. And these documents look really impressive. They're really long and incredibly detailed and outline how the company is progressing towards these big, important social justice goals. But they're not verified by a third party and often are built and rolled out in such a way that makes them look really good, but still allows the business to basically operate as usual. We talked about this in greater detail in our Starbucks episode. They have these sort of showy environmental announcements that are released strategically just to appease their fans enough to make them feel like they can still keep going to Starbucks even though they have done insert terrible blank thing here. And listen, Apple probably has one of the most impressive documents for this. And I don't want to say that they don't care or that these things aren't real in these documents. They 100% are. Their headquarters are 100% powered by renewable energy. But ultimately, this is just a part of their broader marketing plan to tell you the story of who they want you to think Apple as a company is. These sort of ESG reports have become basically standard practice for any big business today. But where Apple really stands out with customer retention is with their products. Apple has done a really good job of designing physical hardware that gives the customer the desired experience that they look for with a high quality product, all the while still withholding and manipulating their releases to maximize profits. A great recent example of this was the USB Type-C charge port on the iPhone 15. Apple held out on their old Lightning connector as long as they possibly could until the EU forced them to adopt a more standardized technology. And Apple does this all the time. They basically invented planned obsolescence. They got rid of the headphone jack just to upsell everybody on their pods. And instead of keeping the design similar year to year to save money, each model year is just noticeably different to be recognized as the latest model to command a higher price tag. With things like that, you would think that people would probably leave, but they don't. And that's because Apple does the products really, really well, and they have a few tricky tricks to make sure that you don't leave. See, I'm an Apple person. I got my MacBook here, and I'm reading this teleprompter off of my iPhone. And I've tried to go and use Android before, and I just ended up ultimately coming back because Apple knows what they're doing. Those yearly releases with the underwhelming advancements to each model year, that's actually on purpose. See, Apple is always the last company to adopt technology as it comes onto the market. They wait until a technology has been proven for the most part, or at least been shown to have promise with consumers. And then they aim to improve upon it. And this is actually a pretty great business model that I fundamentally believe in. Toyota does this with their vehicles a lot too. See, I have all Apple products because they work the way that they're supposed to, they rarely have technical issues, but as many Apple users know, this controlled approach also keeps you trapped in their ecosystem. Apple products only really play with other Apple products, and once you've used their products, it's kind of hard to go back. It feels like a mild hostage situation, but it's not just the technology that makes it hard to leave Apple. Apple has some of the best branding out there. I mean, people know an Apple advertisement before they even see the logo. And with this sleek, modern minimalist design, they have created the Apple person identity. They want you to feel like a sophisticated, successful, well-connected individual when you hold their product. But one of the most powerful and interesting qualities of an Apple person is that they are not an Android person. You probably remember those famous early advertisements with the PC and the Apple guy.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
But that ad is a metaphor for a very real tactical branding strategy that a lot of brands use nowadays. We see this really clearly with the Pepsi-Coke divide. Anyone who's honest with themselves knows that there is functionally no difference between Coke and Pepsi. Blind taste tests have actually shown that consumers prefer the taste of Pepsi, but Coke is still the more successful brand. And yet, 9 in 10 Pepsi and Coke drinkers remain loyal to their chosen drink. Even people who hardly consume soda at all have this weirdly visceral reaction to even the thought of consuming the other brand. And Apple just leans into this 100%. They've gone as far as to make it harder for iPhone users to communicate with Android users. This branding is so deep in the Apple lore that now it's like a way to tell people that they're broke. Like, you're so poor that you have the green text bubbles when I'm chatting to you.
You have an Android?
Yes.
An Android? Never mind. I can't do this. I'm so sorry.
Because I have an Android?
Wait, what?
This actually makes me feel kind of bad because I like to razz our project manager all the time because she is like a staunchly PC Android person and you have problems with your friggin' tech all the time. And another little sidetrack here that I thought was just incredible is that this Apple main character energy is so unshakable that even in movies, the bad guy never has an iPhone.
Apple, they let you use iPhones in movies, and this is very pivotal if you're ever watching a mystery movie, bad guys cannot have iPhones on camera. Every single filmmaker who has a bad guy in their movie, it's supposed to be a secret, wants to murder me right now.
Entire videos have already been made on the absolute genius of Apple's branding, so we're not gonna get too into the weeds here, but the bottom line is, it worked. 92% of the people who have iPhones right now intend to stay iPhone users. Almost a third said it was because they were too tied into Apple's ecosystem or it was just too much of a hassle to switch operating systems. And if you think that this kind of irrational, fierce loyalty to brands is powerful now, it's actually going to get worse. There is talk from big names that some point soon-ish, it will just be the norm, even mandatory, for companies to report customer retention metrics alongside the usual numbers. And there might be some good that comes out of this change for sure, but it's also going to give brands more power across the board to create products and incentive structures that keep you from leaving. On top of this, we seem to be more blindly brand loyal than ever before. With people feeling more isolated and more stretched financially, and with so much chaos going on in the world right now, people are running to their favorite brands for that fleeting feeling of comfort. We offer them the fruits of our labor, and in return we get rituals that bind us together, holy days, and the promise of salvation. We're told that if we just give enough of our dollars to the right God, we can save ourselves, or our country, or the planet. And this is why it hurts so bad when we're betrayed. We think of these brands as being on our side, part of our tribe, our saviors, our very identity, and then suddenly they go off script, and it's like we've been stabbed in the back, and our sense of self is sort of shattered. They partner with the wrong influencer, or they break off the partnership with that said influencer, or back the wrong country or politician. So we bring out the pitchforks and take our businesses to a different mega corporation that quietly hates us just as much as the other one did. They're just a little better at hiding it. Because for all of their talk of supporting values and those big CSR documents, it's not about us or making the world a better place, it's all about making money. Just think about how pretty much every big international corporate chain flies the rainbow flag in June, except where that's an unpopular opinion to have. They don't care about any of this stuff, and it shouldn't surprise us when they show us their true colors, or the lack thereof in this case. But we also have to ask ourselves, do we want these people to be in charge of our social change? Because that's where this is headed. Major corporations are now openly talking about how they have a responsibility to change the world. And I don't think that that's what any of us actually want. If you want real change, don't put your hope into these brands. Don't allow them to form your identity and take the place of a genuine human connection, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. The more fractured we are, the less connected we are to our neighborhoods, the more that we'll rely on these big brands to form our sense of self. And we really, really can't afford that. So listen, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content from us and our channel, make sure that you're subscribed, because we release a video every single week.